Today's podcast, I am joined by Richard Hutchinson from the Hanbury Racing tipster service. Welcome to the pod, Richard. How are you?
I'm really good, Pete. Really good to be with you today.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. I think you're definitely the first ping pong champion of England I've ever had on the podcast. Tell me about that.
I've played table tennis all my life, so I've been in the top 20 in England when I was a junior, and done it all through my life. I still play now. Still play vets. Still ranked in the top 100 in England. But ping pong is like an offshoot of table tennis. So it was actually run by Barry Hearn. So they had the World Championship of Darts, and then the World Championship of Snooker. And then at Ali Pali, they ran the World Championship of Ping Pong, which is basically table tennis, exactly the same as table tennis, but the bats have just got sandpaper on each side. So it takes all the spin out of the game. And so it was like an offshoot. So I started playing that. And I'm like a defender and an attacker, so I'm a bit of an all-rounder at table tennis, and I play a bit of tennis as well. So it kind of lended myself to my kind of style, and I just got good at it, and I was actually better at that than table tennis, bizarrely. And I ended up winning the English qualifier to be the English ping pong champion, and I was on the World Championships were at Ali Pali. I was live on Sky Sports 2 for about 5 minutes when I was playing. So it was mad.
How about that?
It was brilliant. Honestly, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. It's such good fun. And I'm really competitive. So that kind of like sums me up, really. I love my sport. I've always loved sport. Love golf, and do enjoy a bit of poker as well on the side as well. So, all interesting. But it's always competitive. It's always got to be something competitive.
Yeah. Which flows naturally to your work in the betting space, because we were just chatting beforehand about how enthusiastic you are about the betting and how you love being a tipster, and it really suits you. So what is it that got you into betting? Let's go back to your introduction to betting and then also onto tipping.
My first bet was in the Grand National, like most people. Years. I'm 52 now. I think it was Rhyme and Reason one. And I backed that, and I had the third at 66 to 1. And then after that, I was kind of hooked a bit. And then, I got to sort of my 18s, 20s. I didn't go mad gambling or anything, but I spent a few afternoons in the bookies. But I fell in love with horse racing, really, when I went to Cheltenham Festival. And I just absolutely fell in love with it. I just loved seeing the horses up close, and just the whole Cheltenham Festival, the championship of jumping was just amazing. I cut my teeth in starting to understand handicaps more and the big handicaps at Cheltenham, but then also appreciating the Grade 1 horses, the real top class Grade 1 horses. So I got, that's where my passion's really fueled from. I had this sort of thirst for knowledge to try and understand how I could improve my betting and get better at Cheltenham. And so that's really what's formed my really early years. But then, moving forward a little bit, then when I was in bookmakers, I'd do the classic. I'd be looking at the favourites and hitting the favourites and hitting the second favourites, and they'd lose, or a few of them would win. And I'd have this fascination. I'd do a 6 to 4 shot, and then a 25 to 1 shot would come flying past and beat me. And then I started to go and look at the form of those that horse that won. I'd go and look at the outsider's form and see how did that possibly win. So I sort of built up a profile of horses over the years, the types of horses that won at big prices, and that's really where my fascination was in gambling. Really, that's what really formed it. I really got turned off back in the short priced horses, because there's a different mindset and a different enjoyment level, I find, back in an outsider. So I'd rather have £5 each way on a 50 to 1 shot than have and try and win £300 off that, than have £150 on a 2 to 1 shot to win the same amount of money. I feel you're watching the race and you've got this horrible sinking feeling when you're backing the favourite and you want it to win. But conversely, when you're backing a long shot, you just get that whole different level of excitement. And I've really found that with my customers as well on Mega Tipsters. I get a lot of people say they really enjoy the buzz they get. They've never had a buzz like it when they've had a 66 to 1 shot win for them, because they've never they've always been kind of, I don't know, the whole kind of industry is all based around first favourite, second favourite, third favourite. And if you go for a massive outsider, well, then they've got no chance. Well, that isn't the case at all. Every single day, if you look at all the results on any given day, you'll always see a 20 to 1, 33 to 1 shot, 50 to 1 shot either place, and some of them win.
Yeah.
And that is my market. I'm looking at those few horses that win at big prices, and you can find them, but you need about 30 years experience to find them. And I've got it. I've got that, And, it's been interesting how my tipping line has kind of evolved. When I first started doing it, I was doing a blend of shorter price horses and obviously doing my longer ones. But I really sort of then realised that now I've got to focus. You have to focus on what you're good at, and I want to give my customer the best profit possible and the best ride possible, and that is my niche. Really, that really is. And so far, it's gone really well.
Yeah, we'll get on to the review that we performed, because I think one of the things we found is you have a few win-only bets, if you like, and they've been okay, but the each-way stuff is where you've got a phenomenal record. And well, let's talk about actually, because I've got the stats in front of me actually, looking at those horses over 50 to 1, you actually have 150% return on investment, which
it's insane.
It's and that's. Yeah, it's insane, isn't it? And so what is it you're finding, and how are you able to spot horses that no one else can, or that are such big prices? Because the big prices for a reason, right? They haven't really shown anything for a long period of time. Yeah,
people will naturally dismiss long prices. They just think they can't win, but they will have form. There's the markets, the bookmakers form the markets, and there's such a recency bias on the form. They'll look at the classic. I'll give you a classic example. I'll put a horse up at 50 to 1 in an 8-runner race at Sedgefield, at 2:30 at Sedgefield, 3 mile handicap, and I'll go for 50 to 1, and then that'll run, and that might come second, and that'll have some bad form with some good form, but that'll come second, and then the next time it runs, it'll go 3 to 1. Right, and it's one of the most inconsistent horses you'll ever find. But because it's finished second the last time out, they'll make it 3 to 1. Well, I'd never back it at 3 to 1, but I'd back it at 50 to 1. I'd back it at 25 to 1. But I couldn't have it at a really short price. So I kind of struggle. I look at the form, and I enjoy a bit of back form. I do appreciate a bit of back form. But you've got horses need their own conditions to win races, and that's the key. So, and I kind of think. I read between the lines a lot as well. You have to forgive horses bad runs and look for what the horses are really good at themselves. And what I tend to find is that you'll have a horse will have a natural progressive profile as a younger horse, but then once it gets to a certain age and it's hit its ability, well then how do you get winners out of it? So I think like a trainer. How would I get a win out of that horse moving forward and help pay for the training fees for the owners? And so, you start thinking, if you start thinking like a trainer, I'm probably one of the best bits of advice I could give anyone gambling. I started to do it when I was younger. Was I started to read form backwards. So I'd start with older form, and then just gradually I'd then work through and see what they were doing close to the time. So, I'd look at a horse, I don't know, say a 2 mile handicap, and a 2 mile handicap hurdle, and I'd look at it and think, well, yeah, he started off over 2 miles, but actually what that horse needs is 2.5 miles, 3 miles. So I'd be looking at things like that, really, which make a difference.
It does, I suppose, turn on its head and looking at it in sequence from when it first started running, rather than what most people look at is, what did it do in the last half a dozen races? And it could be, that's it's missing its target, or whatever, it's doing a wrong trip, or it's under the wrong conditions.
Yeah, if it ran over 2 miles, if it runs on, I think to myself, well, I need to step it up if I was the trainer. So I'd step up to 2.5 miles. If it was still staying on, then maybe it needs 3 miles. So, but then if it steps up to 2.5 miles and fades, then chances are it might need a shorter trip. But if the trainer starts going the wrong way with the next race, classic ones over on the flat, if they're it looks like a sprinter, and they step it up to a mile and a quarter, and you think, well, it's no way going to win over a mile and a quarter. But they keep running over that, and then all of a sudden, bang, they bring it back to 6 furlongs, 7 furlongs, what they need, and you think, well, that makes sense. And you look at the price, and it's 20 to 1, and you think, well, that's because the last 3 runs they run over a mile, and it needs 6 furlongs. So it's looking for the horses that they're getting their conditions that they need and at a good price. And I'd rather back a horse at 20 to 1. What I find is a lot of horses that are 20 to 1, 33 to 1, their form isn't much different to horses that are marked up at 8 to 1. The 8 to 1 horses have still got holes in their form. So I'd rather take a chance on the 20 to 1 and 33 to 1 shot than go for those short horses. It's just to...
Are you keeping a notebook of sorts? Are you keeping a record? Are you logging, different types of different horses as you see them run, and you watch them, you think this horse needs longer, or watch out for this horse when running under a different growing. Yeah. Is that the kind of thing you do?
Yeah, I the only software I use a Racing Post website. I use their full Monte service. So I look at use their ratings, the RPR ratings. But they have a tracker on there, and my tracker is full of notes. Yeah, so I'm looking. I study for typically between 8 and 12 hours a day, every day.
Yeah, I was going to ask. There's no shortcuts.
But it's like the thing is, it's not. I do it for that's my love. I do it if I didn't have it. If I had a job, I'd come home and do it. So I love studying form. So I'm doing what I love. So I'm just sitting. I sit there and just study form all day and make notes and think, not today, but if it runs over an extra mile, or if it gets down to a certain mark, or I think the horse might need blinkers, or it might need cheek pieces, or I think it's got a wind problem, so I only back it after it's had a wind up, anything like that, any little notes that I think are worthwhile. And I just get excited when I look through my tracker and see when a horse is declared that I've been waiting for. And then I'm hoping that it's going to be at a good price. So there's loads of horses that come in on my tracker at 3 to 1, 5 to 1, 7 to 1, 8 to 1. And I just don't even put them up. All I'm focusing on is that horse at 16 to 1. I don't like putting up horses less than 12 to 1, really. But I actually get more excited the bigger the price is. So if it's, I want to see that at 33 to 1, I want to see it at 50 to 1, I want to see a 66 to 1 shot. And then I start getting excited because I think, I'll back that type of that profile of that horse at 66 to 1 every single time, because that will win 5 times out of 66, and I'm making a massive profit. And that's how I view it.
Yeah,
that's how I view it. I'm looking at the price of the horse, and I'm overlaying the probability that I feel that type of horse will win at, the how often it will win, and that dictates to me what that makes it a good bet if the probability and the price is completely skewed and wrong. So that's.
Are you building a tissue for every horse in those races, or just for those that you're actually interested in?
Depends on the size of the race. What I'll do is I'll focus on looking at the outsiders in the field. Anything over 10 to 1, I'll look through those horses first, see if any of those interest me, and if they do, then I'll look at the front of the market and see how strong I think the favourites are, and spend more time on the races, because I focus 90% of the horses I put up are in handicaps. So I've naturally got the job part done for me, because I'm up against the handicap mark as well as other horses. But my first question is, can my horse run well enough off that mark to win a race? And if I start off with that premise, then I can I start off with that, and then look at the favourites. And ideally, the ideal scenario is there's only one horse in the first 2 or 3 in the betting that I think are a big danger, because there's always one. The horses are naturally unreliable, so even the horses at the front of the market can lose, even if I really fancy them. So the fewer at the front of the market I like, the better. Then it starts looking like a really good bet. Then if I've got a 50 to 1 shot and I feel I can get most of the market leaders beat, because I don't rate them.
Mm-hmm. I suppose you're dealing with a lot of horses that are just plain inconsistent. So for whatever reason, any rhyme or reason on any given day, they might perform extremely well, and another day they might perform just very averagely or poorly, and there's no real explanation for it. So it's not necessarily the trip or the going or the jockey or whatever it is. It's like when it comes to, say, footballers, someone explained to me the biggest difference for a lot of footballers, okay, the really top ones, they're different, but for a lot of them, it's the guys in the Premier League or the top of their game, are just, they're extremely consistent week in, week out. They're able to do an 8 or a 9 out of 10, whereas those guys playing in League One, League Two, they can chuck in an 8 out of 10 performance, but they'll do that 1 in 4, and the rest of the time they just won't be able to manage it. Is a similar analogy to some of the horses that you see?
Totally, yeah. I mean, the Grade 1 horses, they're more consistent, but even then, they look at Shishkin, anything. The horses are fragile by nature, by their very nature. So they're going to put in bad performances anyway. So you've got to give yourself. I love giving myself a safety factor. So if I take my hat off to people who tipsters or people who bet, who can genuinely make a profit at prices at less than 4 to 1, because I think you've got to. I don't use any information. I have no information whatsoever. I just have the form book. But congratulations if you can pull that off, because you need so many winners. It's just scary. I mean, and under 2 to 1, then that's just madness. That is in my head. You know what I mean? That's just but people can make money at that level, and there are still very good value bets at that level. But that's not my specialism. And I've learned. I like a nice big safety factor, and I like the odds in my favour. So I'd rather always back a 33 to 1 shot. If I can find a good 33 to 1 shot, I'll back that every time, each way. Now, say a 50 to 1 shot. I'll put plenty of 50 to 1 shots up, and I'd rather be sitting there in a 18 runner handicap, knowing I've got potentially 5 or 6 places running for me. That horse only got a place to make a 9-point profit in the race. If I'm putting that horse at 1 point way, and for me, that is how I'd rather rock and roll. If I'm screaming at the telly when I'm watching the races, and the first, if my horse isn't near the front, but he's trying to stay on, and I'm waiting the cameras sort of pan across to the leaders, and then I'm just focused on the finish line. I'm just screaming at. I'm hoping my horse just charges through and gets a 4th, and just grabs a place. And it's just a different mindset of betting. But I just think that's just so much more enjoyable. I think than just the whole binary. Well, I'll back a 6 to 4 shot. I've had 100 quid on it, and if it gets beat a short head, I've done my conquer. I've done my conquering. You know what I mean? All the money's gone, all the bank's gone, and
You're the complete opposite to what's it, Harry Finley, who's backing horses at 1 to 10 or whatever, because he knows they should be shorter. So, but each to their own. That works for Harry, and definitely. He made a very successful strategy from that approach, and you're doing similar outside, isn't it? It's understanding,
horses,
like you say,
horses for courses, horses for courses, as tipsters for courses.
Exactly. So you must be the man to talk to when it comes to the Cheltenham Festival. We're recording this just before the Aintree Festival and the Grand National coming up this weekend. I guess those kind of races are bread and butter to you.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, and the thing is, the Tote Ten To Follow is coming to an end this Aintree.
Which you won. Let's talk about that as well, Richard.
Yeah. Well, Tote Ten To Follow. I mean, that is just the best. I think that's the best value bet you'd ever have. Tote Ten To Follow jumps. I mean, the Tote Ten To Follow has been going. Well, was going for years. In the 80s and 90s, it was really, really popular. But I only started getting involved with it sort of late 2007, 2008, and I did it for a few years then, and now I actually finished 9th in 2009, and I had a runner on the last day. I was in 9th place, and I had a runner in the Grand National. That was the last day of the competition, and I could tell from the people above me that if my horse won the Grand National, I'd have won £250,000 that year. So I mean, that is as exciting as it can get. Do you know what I mean? That was just insane.
Yeah, of course.
But then the competition stopped, and then it only started up like 2 or 3 years ago. And so when it started again, I was so pleased because literally, what I love about it is it starts in October, November, and literally every single day, every single week, you've got an interest in the top class racing, the Grade 1 racing, all the horses that they're going to win, like the King George, all the big races. And all the races at Cheltenham, all the really top class jumps horses. It really suits my style of the real Grade 1 stuff over jumps that I love, and the knowledge I have from that. It does definitely help. But in the jumps 2020, I managed to win it. It was absolutely bonkers. It was just so exciting. Just there's no feeling like it when you win that sort of money. We won the syndicate, the family, and my best mate, Gary Ambrose. We won £188,000 off the Tote Ten To Follow. So off the back of that, an album photo on the Gold Cup for us, and that was just the most exciting race ever to watch. That was.
I can imagine.
Yeah. And then off the back of that, I then just thought, sod it. I've got a buffer there to do what I love. So that's when I became a tipster. So I jacked my job in, and then literally from June 2020, when the race started again in June, I started proofing the tips and putting the tips up then. So that's when I started, and I haven't looked back. I'm just so happy that I'm able to really just, my passion is my job, and it's not work, is it? Yeah. It's not work, is it? I've got the stress. I've got the stress of my customers and worrying. To be fair, I do get quite miserable when the horses don't win and when they run badly, and I think, oh no. But you can't. I absolutely spend so much time doing it that, and unfortunately, I've over almost 2 years now, I've got to a point where I can trust the process. I can trust the process of my process, and knowing pretty much what my strike rate will be for placing and for winning. So that's good. But yeah, the Tote Ten To Follow is just brilliant. I'd recommend anyone do that, because you can put 10 lines in, cost you £50, and you've got a bet there that just gives you so much fun for 4 or 5 months of the year. And I just think it's great, and you can win 5-6 figures off it. So why not?
So I was going to ask you about what decided to make you set up Mega Tips and then Hanbury Racing, and then obviously go alone, and that's why you won big on the Tote Ten To Follow. Yeah. And so do you combine obviously running Hanbury Racing with your own personal betting? How does it break down in terms of, if you like, your income, where it comes from betting, or is it the tipping side of it?
Oh, no, it's mainly the tipping, really. I back every single horse. The staking system that I apply to my bets or to my tips, I use a point system. And it's generally 1 point each way on all the each way selections, pretty much. And that's what I back. I back every single horse, and then 10% of my stake I put in a little live changing multiple, which I know I shouldn't do. It's like the odds are against it, because if I'm putting up on a given day, I don't often put 4 horses up, but it's usually sort of 2. But if I put 3 horses up, there'll probably be typically 100 to 1, 66 to 1, and a 33 to 1. So I'm putting them in a multiple, and the chances of getting them up are pretty slim. But
it's your lottery ticket, isn't it?
Oh yeah, but the thing is, then I'm looking at that, and that 100 to 1 shot. When I do my write-ups on Mega Tipsters and for Hanbury Racing, I always put, I do a detailed write-up to explain. I feel I need to justify why I'm doing such a big price wars. So I'm not just plucking it out of the air. So I do a big write-up, but then I also, on there, I always say what I believe is still, if that horse is 100 to 1, I think that horse probably should be a 20 to 1 shot. So I'll say that horse is still valued at 20 to 1. So, all right, so I'm putting that treble up at 100 to 1, 66 to 1, and 33 to 1. But actually, in the reality, I really think that's a 20 to 1, a 12 to 1, and an 8 to 1. So if I can, and just for very small pennies or pounds on the multiples, that they can be massive returns. But I try and practice what I preach with my customers, insofar that I want them to back them, each way, and don't do the multiples, because you eat away your ROI too much. So
yeah, of course. And you need to view it for the prism of, this is a real long shot, and it's a bit of fun sometimes. Yeah. But even as a Trixie, if you were to get one winner and maybe a place or even 2 places, you're going to have a pretty strong return at big odds like that, aren't you?
You are.
It does make sense.
But just keep. I try and tell my customers, keep those Trixie bets and the doubles and the trebles small, because the odds are so large. So, but interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you about the mindset you need, because you're betting at big prices, so more bets are going to lose than actually win. More bets are not going to place than actually place. You obviously are adapted to that mindset. It suits you and your personality and the way you like to bet. But my experience, and I imagine yours, is that most people don't handle that type of betting particularly well, and need maybe encouraging through it or educating on things like variance and sequences and what to expect. Yeah. How have you found it from that point of view, especially operating a tipster service?
For me, I'm okay because one of my friends actually used to be a professional gambler, and when I started up the tipping service, he said, "Richard, I think you'll do well because of your kind of county level and sort of high level sport that you played, mentally, you'd be strong enough to deal with it." But you're right. When probably the biggest challenge that I have for sort of the Mega Tipsters platform and my Hanbury Racing service is that my customers, a lot of them just they're looking for a quick fast. They can't cope with, like you say, the long losing sequences. They don't see, a place to me. If I had one customer recently, he got really upset. He said, "Oh, you haven't had a winner for 16 winners." And I said, "Well, hang on a minute. I haven't had a winner for 16 winners, an outright winner. My last winner was a 50-1 shot Global Citizen at Cheltenham Festival, which was nice. But then out of those 16 losing bets, I had 4 horses that placed at 33-1 and 20. But he didn't even see that 33-1 place was a winner. But with my service, it really is a winner. You got every single for me, the horses that just place are as important as the ones that win, because you look at my stats. I've broken my stats down into, if you put a imaginary £1 stake on all the winners, that produces I've produced 11. I think my stats at the moment, I'm about 1,150 points up since June 2020. And but out of that 1,120, about 650 of that is just purely the horses that place. So it's really key that people follow, see the places as the wins as well. But it is hard, that's why I've recommended a large betting bank. I mean, I had a suggested recommended betting bank of 200 points. Because my biggest drawdown was about 100, just over 100 points. But obviously, I've loved your Smart Betting Club analysis you've done on us. It's a brilliant document, and I've always.
Well, it's the Monte Carlo simulation analysis, and actually, I was going to mention as you're talking about that, the longest historic maximum drawdown is 120
points.
And obviously the Monte Carlo simulations allow us to not just look at what you've achieved live, but also simulations over millions and millions of bets, repeating the kind of profile. And like you say, it does require a larger bank, doesn't it?
Because, it does,
and that patient mindset, because you're gonna have, I think the longest losing sequence you've had is 37. So the chapter had 16.
That's exactly it. And and you just it is a unique service. It's not for everyone. I'd say it's very much a Marmite. I'd say that the Hanbury Racing is quite similar to a golf and tipster. So the mindset or the theory behind the golf and tipster is you'll be putting up the short prices will be 8, 10 to 1s, I guess. But there's multiple 125 to 1s, 500 to 1 shots, and you're looking to grab some of those big prices, but you go through long losing sequences. So if you've got that kind of mindset where you've followed a golf and tipster, well then Hanbury Racing is your perfect kind of horse racing tipster. But it certainly isn't for everyone, because I do understand that some people need to have regular wins to really suit their mindset. You've got to choose a tipster, and that's probably one of the best bit of advice you could give. You have to think about your mindset and overlay and try and find a tipster that follows your kind of mindset that's right for you, because we're all different, and you've got to do the right thing for yourself. So I get a reasonable amount of churn rate. I have done over the particular first year that I did the service, because I hadn't built up that. I've got almost 2 years worth of stats now, so I've got that kind of. I've got my ROI at the moment is actually 40%. So lifetime ROI is 40%, which which is absolutely huge in the context of horse racing tips. There's very few out there that are better than that. But because of my long shot, because it's a long shot service, people think it's luck. So I have to. I've needed a longer period of time to build the trust up of the customers. But I've particularly the last sort of 6 to 8 months, I've started to really get a nice bit of traction, and my customers, I've got long-term customers now because they realise that the process works, and it's not fluke, and there's a lot of skill involved with it. I mean, I loved in your report. Is it the P value?
The P value? Yeah. It's the more data you have, the less it becomes reliant on luck rather than skill. So yeah, the P value is a really good barometer for judging any tipster service or any data sample when you're trying to find an edge.
And on the P value, I'm like 0.0. So I'm like, it's like not luck. Do you know what I mean? And I love that. I love that. Do you know what I mean? And that it's that was the bit I took the most out of the report, really. That it demonstrated that there was a huge amount of skill involved. I think there's more skill involved in picking out size. It's actually I think it's an art form, really. I love the fact that you kind of you're looking at these horses that everyone's dismissed, and you go, no, I know that's got a good chance, that one, for the price, and having the judgment to then actually put it up, and the confidence to have to put it up isn't easy, because at the end of the day, I'm very, very mindful that people are putting their hard-earned money on all my tips. I take this very, very seriously, and for me, that's I'll only ever put a horse. I sit there and I worry a lot about some of the horses.
Do you find yourself second guessing yourself sometimes, saying, "Oh, I can't put this up because I've had 20 losers on a run," or I can't put this one up because it's 66 to 1 and I need to pick a win. That's only natural sometimes, isn't it? When you feel that pressure, if you're like running a service and all people putting money on, especially if you're getting complaints or people maybe struggling to understand the logic. Do you ever, find yourself kind of wondering if you need to change your strategy?
Should I have made it easy for myself? Do you know?
Yeah, exactly. But, 6 to 4 favourite, it's going to win.
Put a few fans up, do you know what I mean? Just churn a few winners through. I do, but I do have to stop myself. So I kind of look at it and think, oh. But the thing is, like I say, I have to trust my process now, and it works. It works. I've had some absolutely, my customers have had amazing wins. I had the biggest win I've had was Freewheeling Dylan in the Irish National last year at 150 to 1. And that was a form pick. That wasn't just a poke. That horse had run well in the national in the summer. I think at Killarney, it was, or Kilbeggan, and he'd got some good form in the bag there. So that wasn't a fluke. I just took a view on it, and I liked the Grand. It's a good jumper, and funny enough, I'm actually putting that horse up for the Grand National, because that's running the Grand National on Saturday. And it's 50 to 1, which is an insane price for that horse. It's only, I think it's running off a £10 higher mark, but that was, you've got to adjust the Irish to the English. So it's probably only a sort of £2 or £3 higher in Irish terms. And it's a fantastic jump. It'll go for the front. So it won't have a hard luck story, because it won't get brought down by anyone. It's going to be out the front.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's what you want in the National, isn't it?
If it gets into a rhythm, and it's a brilliant jumper. So if it just gets into a rhythm, takes the fences, I'm going to be putting that one up at 50 to 1. But yeah, probably the most satisfying winner I've had was a horse called Danilo Dairy. I put it up at 100 to 1. And you've got to put this into context. This was like a 0 to 100 handicap chase. And Danilo Dairy, you're talking, this is the lowest grade of racing. And this horse was running off, I think, 73, which is like a terrible rating, really. But this horse was actually rated 35. So it was like 37, 38 pounds out of the handicap, right? Which, that's just ridiculous. And I'm looking at it going, well, I've never seen a horse rated 35, pretty much ever chases. And anyway, so I looked at the form of the horse, and it just made me smile. It's just the way that the handicap system does make a fool of itself sometimes. And like that horse been running point to points, so that the point to point races don't count against your handicap mark. And that horse had won a point to point, and that had been placed in a couple of reasonable point to points really, and had gone through the Cheltenham sales for about for quite a tidy sum really. And its full brother was owned by Gigginstown, was a 150 rated chaser. Yeah, so this horse had been point to point, and then it was injured for a couple of years. Then the trainer had sent it over hurdles for 3 runs to get a handicap mark over 2 miles. And this horse was like a massive, great big 3-mile chaser. You can just see it when he was popping these little hurdles, and he was tailed off, coming back from injury. But then they sent it into it first time in a handicap and chucked it back up to 3 miles. So it was the rating of 35 was irrelevant. A rating I thought the horse was probably a 90 to 110 rated horse. And anyway, so I put up 100 to 1, and the thing got backed into 13 to 2, and it absolutely bolted up. I mean, that won by that jump from the front, led all the way, and was eased down up the home straight. I won like a 1 to 4 on shot. Do you know what I mean? And then I put up 100 to 1, and my customers, they absolutely loved that. And that's the dream, isn't it? I backed that 100 to 1, and it's absolutely bolted up on the bridle by 12 lengths. And that horse now is rated 120. It's now rated 120. So it's but that's when it's satisfying. You see something, you see a bit of form, but you can only find it if you spend loads of time trawling through the form. So I'm lucky that I've got the time to do it, and that's what makes following a tipster worthwhile, because we have got the time. If you can find a tipster, like I say, that suits your mindset, and has put the time in, or uses software that analyzes their winners, then they can be very worthwhile to follow. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, most people don't have the time or the expertise necessarily to apply and to identify horses like you're talking about there, and go through all the history and the backstory of that horse and the trainer and how it's, the point-to-point races, and digging into all those kind of stats. And it's certainly that's what I find often the appeal for many people is, it's very hard to make a profit. Bookmakers have all the information that you have and a lot more. They also have that overround. And then you factor in, the all the issues about getting on, all this kind of stuff as well these days. No wonder, people use services like yours, and there's, others that we review and recommend at SBC. And I was going to ask you as well about what you thought about the profit that we've seen at Betfair SP, because, very often we find with tipsters that at Betfair SP, their edge is gone, because they're making a 10% ROI at advice prices, then come race time, it's gone. But with yours, actually, it goes the opposite way. And I guess that's down to the fact that you're backing outsiders, and, there's the Betfair SP is just that much bigger because not so many people want to back these horses.
I mean, to be fair, I never used to put the Betfair SPs on the website. I haven't got that on Mega Tipster's website. So I've only found that out since Smart Betting Club have actually done the analysis on it. So I'm really pleased you've done it. I really am pleased about that. But the prices, a lot of prices are shorter. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they are short, but the thing is, with Betfair, with the Betfair exchange, you'll get some that just drift out. They're big prices, and they'll just keep drifting and drifting and drifting. And the Betfair SP does go insanely large on some of them. And if you just level stake them all, you'll take the benefit of the enhanced Betfair SP. So, what was the percentage, Peter, that you'd? Was it something like 37%?
Yeah, so at the time we did the review, you had about 32.36% ROI advised price as your bookmaker, and that was 37.77%.
Yeah, so it's 5% high. Yeah, because like the stat.
What?
Sorry.
Yeah, so I was going to say what was noticeable as well is that we obviously track the odds in the live Betfair market with the 2 hours before the race, and the average odds of your bets at 2 hours before the race was about 38 to 1. And then you can see incrementally every 30 minutes or 15 minutes, 10 minutes as we get closer to the race, it's going up to 45, 47, and then actually come race time, it's just short of 50 at Betfair SP, which is the average odds. So you can just see so many of these. Okay, some do shorten, like you talked about Danilo Dairy, that shortened significantly, and obviously a big gamble on that particular horse. But almost like the strategy to me is like, yes, take some on Betfair, but also take some with the bookmakers, and then you're going to get the best of both worlds. Sometimes you're going to get best odds guaranteed if it does drift, and then obviously maybe you're going to get a big price on Betfair if that drift takes place with the bookmaker, because you might find a 50-1 shot with a bookmaker is 3 figures on Betfair.
That's it. That's it. I mean, the thing is, just so the people, the viewers can understand, I put my bets up twofold. I will do some the night before, but usually between 6 and 8 o'clock. But the majority of them, or about 70% of them, I put them up via a timed email. So the timed email always goes out at 7 o'clock in the morning. So which is good. To be fair, I like the fact that it goes out at 7 o'clock, because at least everyone knows exactly when they're going to get the email. So if people want to set the alarm and get up at 7 o'clock, I put up with 3 bookmakers. So the price does shorten quickly from 7 o'clock onwards, but at least everyone's got a chance of getting some of that if they're up at 7 o'clock and getting on at 7 o'clock. But as you say, what happens is, this is a classic example. I'll put a horse up at 50-1. Between 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock, the horse will get backed in, and it might go into, 20-1. And then it will sit there for the best part of the day until, like I say, about 2 hours before the race, when the liquidity starts to hit the market and there's more bets coming on. That horse will then start to drift. Sometimes the horse, the bookies might even slash it in a 12-1. But then, like I say, generally speaking, that last hour, the last 10 minutes, the horse, 90% of the horses drift out. So my advice to people, if they miss the early price, well, then just leave it and then have a go on Betfair later on. And definitely 100% always make sure you bet with the best odds guaranteed if you've still got some of those accounts to take advantage, because I can imagine that quite a few people, they wake up at 7:45 and then they've missed the 50-1. They're cursing me because he's put up at 50. He's not going. I can only get 20s. They go and take the 20s at 8 o'clock, and they haven't got the best odds guarantee. And then it drifts back out to 40s or 50s again before the off, and they've missed it. So it's a tricky situation, but that's how I rock, really. So you got just get used to my the patterns of when I put the horses up, and do your best to try and get a bit on with the bookmakers and get the extra places if you can, if you've still got some of those accounts, or worse case, with a Betfair. I mean, one of the real big edges that I have with the service, it's interesting actually how it's panned out. That when COVID hit, and the formulation of the markets, rather than being done by the on-course bookmakers, it was done by the off-course bookmakers. What actually happened that first year was that they did the crafty. The bookmakers compressed the front end of the market, but then they allowed the longer price horses to be longer prices, more like Betfair prices. There was that year there was more 101 shots win on the track than ever before, and it's just a general comment. There's more that they allow the horses to be bigger prices, which suits my service. And if you have got bookmaker accounts, where the other real massive benefit is that you've got these additional places where if you take advantage of additional places, like Sky, for example, they always offer the most additional places most of the time.
They do, yeah. And Betfred,
yeah, exactly. Betfred and to be fair, Paddy Power and Betfair Sports, but they do good additional places a lot of the time. And that just plays into my hands, because then I'm sitting there with a 50-1 shot. That could be a classic example would be like a 13-runner race or 12-runner race, and I can get 4 places. So I've got 12 runners, got 4 places, and I've got a 50-1 shot. So it's just got to get in that first 4. Just finish 4th, mate. Just get into that 4th place and get. And we've got a 10-point pickup or a net 9-point pickup just for finishing 4th. And that's where some of my profit and real edge comes from, really. It's a real nice place to be in the market.
Of course, yeah, of course. No, it's fascinating service, and it's really good to talk to you about it, to learn more about your approach. And how it all works, because we're recording this just ahead of, and by the time it goes out, the review of Hanbury Racing will be published and be able to be read by smart betting club members, and people can get into all the stats. We've got the information on, like we talked about, Betfair SB, Betfair prices, odds movement, just the minutiae of the service and all the information, because you've got, I think your edge is a little bit more on the national hunt and some of the different odds ranges that you that you perform well at. We talked about 50 to 1, for example. And I believe there's a discount as well, isn't there, for Smart Betting Club members? Do you want to tell people about that?
Yes. We basically you can sign up for we do a 14-day trial, or you can sign up for a month, or you can sign up for 3 months, 6 months, or 12-month subscriptions. But what we're doing for Smart Betting Club members is we're going to give a 25% discount off your first product that you buy. So you can have a month off. You can have a 25% off 1 month if you want. But obviously the best value there is if you go for 12 months, 25% off. That works out to £103 saving. So
that's really good.
Worth having, definitely worth having if you're interested. And hopefully the good thing about it, Pete, is that you've kind of helped to give the knowledge and understanding to your members. So they're actually the ones that will probably appreciate and understand my service as a sort of investment type, kind of long-term investment, albeit high risk.
You say high risk, but everything high risk is high reward. So you mentioned golf before, and that is high reward. You're often getting a similar, maybe not 40%, but 30+% off, and at least 25% plus, 25 to 35 to 40 with the best performing. But then that is high risk. So you'll have weekends where none of your golfers feature, and then that might be the case for a month. Yeah. And then obviously, boom, you have a 150 to 1 guy that goes and wins in a playoff. And then that's made all your losses back and a whole chunk of extra profit. So it's very similar. And what you said earlier on, which I feel like is really important, is like your risk profile. If you like betting on favourites and you struggle with long losing sequences occasionally, then, it might not be for you. But if you like the puzzle and the way you're solving that particular puzzle, finding a 50 to 1 shot that, maybe is 20 to 1 or 12 to 1, then this is a service for you. And I'm really intrigued by what you do, because it's very different to many other people. And everyone's, most of the time, like you say, it's at the front end of the market to some extent, maybe the top 3 favourites or first 3 in the race. And not very often that I find someone that likes to pick out a 66 or 100 to 1 shot on a daily basis.
That's it. Yeah. No, I love it. I absolutely love it. I get great satisfaction on passing on the information to my customers and knowing that. Now I've had people just message me and say I've actually physically I've never shaken like this when I've had a winner like this. It's just such a buzz. When you've got a 50 to 1 shot, 66 to 1 shot, travelling there, and sometimes they act like, say, they bolt up, they win like an odds-on shot, and people just can't believe it. And it's refreshing and rewarding knowing that people have had the bets on and have had probably their biggest ever win. Do you know what I mean? Just from a single bet, and it's very satisfying.
Just give you a real buzz.
I love it, and I just all I want to do is sit and study form all day and find the winners for the next day for people. So I'm a bit of a saddo like that, but then that's what I love, and it's nice to be able to do that for a job, and hopefully my customers really, and I love doing the write-ups. They take a long while to do the write-ups, and sometimes I think to myself, I'm not doing myself any favours, because I'll spend 2 or 3 hours doing write-ups, and I'm doing it at like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, doing these write-ups a lot of the time, and I'm crazy and bonkers, but I love to give the reasoning so people can see it's not luck. There is skill, and there is understanding of, I try and make as good a case as possible for that horse, and my customers come back and say, Rich, I think I read your write-up, and I think every single one of them is going to win. and I say, well, to be honest with you,
that'd be nice.
To be honest with you, I think every single one of them is going to win, but I know they're not going to. But if it sounds good and I can put a good case together, and it's a realistic case, that's the key. Then take a chance at those odds. Plenty of them do win and place. A lot of them are at the back and finish last. But enough of them do run well enough to make a nice profitable. Nice profit for the customers, and it's just a different different model of tipping, really, and making a profit, which I love. Yeah, and hopefully all your customers.
Yeah, thank you ever so much for joining me today, Richard. And for those people interested in finding out more, how can they, find your website? How can they find you on social media?
Yeah. You can find us at www.megatipsters.co.uk. Send us a message, or you can find me on Twitter at Hanbury Racing, or there's also at Megatipsters on Twitter as well. So direct message me through there or through the website, and lovely to have you all on board.
Yeah, for those people interested in finding out about the discount, you'll be able to read that in the review or on the Tipster Savings part of the Smart Betting Club membership section. But all that remains me to say, Richard, is to thank you ever so much again for your time and wish you, all the best this weekend on the Grand National. I know by the time this goes out, the race will have been run. But certainly I feel like you're the person to, obviously I prove a lot of tipsters, but certainly I'll be looking for your opinion on the day. I know you mentioned the horse earlier, but I'll be looking for seeing what you think in the actual day of the actual market.
Yeah.
Ahead of the race itself.
That's great, mate. That's great. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your time.
Right. Thank you.